today's video is my first impressions and my general thoughts on the Yamaha Tenere 700 World Raid Edition, which has just dropped in Australia. So let's find out what this bike is all about. How is the World Raid different from the Tenere 700 standard model, and is it worth getting? I think the two big ones for me are the steering dampener by Öhlins. That is an absolute game changer if you tend to ride your Tenere pretty hard off road. That's really going to be worth its weight in gold when you're doing deep sand, deep mud, really difficult situations where you're going to potentially have tank slappers coming up and the steering's all over the place. I think particularly for the Australian environment where a lot of riding is in deep, soft sand, this is just going to be a game changer. So I'm really happy to see that. That's probably the thing I'm most excited about. Followed closely by the bigger tank, 23 liters over the standard 16. That means you're getting 500 kilometers of range. Why is that a big deal in Australia? Well, we have some very long distances between petrol stations. The bigger the tank, the better here in Australia. And it means you don't have to go to the aftermarket. So you're getting something that's going to be covered under warranty. I think the double filling caps, that's a little bit of an irritation, but it's a worthy sacrifice in order to get that range. Other notable differences are the wider foot pegs. A lot of people are going to be happy with that. They're not going to have to go to the aftermarket. It means more comfort, less fatigue in the legs as well. You get an alloy bash plate as standard now, which I think is something that's going to be needed in the short term because a lot of bash plates that are currently available for the standard Tenere aren't going to be fitting this World Raid because the catalytic converter is actually moved up towards the extractors there on the motorcycles. So the clearance for the standard Tenere 700 bash plate probably isn't going to fit in a lot of cases. In the interim, while you wait for the accessory market to keep up, at least you're going to have a bash plate. You've got your USB port, which is nice to have. You do need to charge your stuff, particularly if you're like me and you're recording videos along with your rides. You got an awful lot to charge. A USB charger on a motorcycle is a must. The other thing that I really like to see is the ABS off switch. It's one of the things that I really love about the CRF 300L over a lot of other bikes I've ridden and test ridden. And that's when you have to go into sub menus to turn things off, like traction control and ABS. It's just too much of a headache. I want to be able to press one button and it's off. I'm ready to go off road. So I'd love to see the one button option on the Tenere. I think that's a great move. This really shows that they understand their audience, that this is an adventure bike that really is going to get ridden off-road and ridden pretty hard. There are other minor aesthetic changes. There's a nip and tuck here. The windscreen is a little bit different, but I don't want to get bogged down in the stuff that really doesn't matter. I want to talk about the major stuff. The other big upgrade on the Tenere 700, which I think is amazing, is the suspension. Now, it's still KYB suspension, but now it's fully adjustable, front and rear, as well as having 20mm extra travel, which was much needed. And really with that, the fuel tank and the steering dampener, I think those are the biggest cases for why you might go for the World Raid over the standard Tenere. Now let's get to the riding part. How does all that stuff that's been bolted on as extras translate to a riding experience compared to the standard Tenere? And my initial impression was it didn't lose the feeling of being a Tenere. It felt just like home, just like the one I rode in 2019 before the world lost its mind and everything else that happened after that point. It felt like a familiar friend. It was great to ride just like the old one. That CP2 motor, a fantastic little motor. I love it. Got just enough power to have fun, plenty of torque, and sounds amazing. And those are all great things that make it fantastic as a bike to own on the road and off the road. It really is a well-designed motor for an adventure bike. Other than that, the differences that you notice is the suspension. It does feel a little bit stiffer than the standard model, less likely to wallow under braking. This suspension does cope with those bigger hits better than the standard suspension. See, standing up, very natural for an adventure bike. Speed bump. I don't even feel it. The handling feels just as good and just as responsive and flickable through the corners. It hasn't lost anything with the extra travel and the different suspension over the standard model, so it's still just as fun in the twisties as the standard model. The seat on the World Raid is different from the standard model, and that's to try and bring the height down a little bit, but it is still 10mm taller than the original. Me, I'm a little bit over 180 centimeters, so I'm a pretty average height guy. And on the standard model, I could just about flat flat-footed. I had the balls on my feet and my heels are just off the ground. But with this World Raid, I'm definitely just on the balls of my feet. So it is a noticeable height difference. So it is a fairly tall bike, but if you're average height like me, it shouldn't be much of an issue. Unless you do need to get your feet down on the ground flat foot to feel comfortable, then this might not be the bike for you. So if you're on the shorter side, this is going to be a little bit challenging. Even with that lower seat, it's still 10 mil taller all up over the standard model. The difficult question here though is, do you stick with the standard model or do you maybe upgrade or go straight for the World Raid? And the question you got to ask yourself here, and the one I've been asking myself, is it depends how you want to go about things. Do you get the standard model and head to the accessory market and maybe think to yourself, I can actually save a bit of money getting components, or maybe you can get components for the same price that the World Raid would cost you, but maybe you get slightly better components for that price that are more tailored to your needs. The other route is going with the World Raid, which is far more pricey, as I said, $5,500 extra dollars. But for that money, you're getting the package complete. There's no faffing about with accessories. You don't have to go and do 1,000 hours of research trying to figure out what suits your needs the most. The other benefit is this stuff's all covered under warranty, and if it does break, you can just go to Yamaha to replace those items, and they're going to have them in stock because this is all mass-produced stuff. If you're wanting the simple option, that World Raid is amazing, and that's where I'm leaning towards these days with a baby, my business. It's very busy around the Solid household. I'm renovating this place as well. At the moment, I don't want the headache. So getting a bike that's ready to hit the Simpson Desert tomorrow in the Tenere 700 World Raid is definitely appealing, but I can understand if you want to create your own bike. So I think Yamaha have done a great thing here, offering both sides of the coin. For those that want to do it themselves, get the standard model. For those that want the ready to go package, get the World Raid. I feel bad for this next segment because I feel like I'm throwing Yamaha under the bus a bit here. Most manufacturers are guilty of this recently, and it's just a factor of the economic environment, and it's also my lack of acceptance of price increases over the recent years. This is my third go at getting this out, and it's a problem that's been rattling around in my head. The thing I loved about the original Tenere was that it was a bike of the people. And what I mean by that is just about anyone could afford it. Even a learner, if they saved really hard and you were younger, it was feasible that you could get a Tenere 700 because it was under $16,000 right away, which wasn't too bad for the time. But now at 20,000 Australian dollars for the standard model and $25,500 for the World Raid, I really think Yamaha have moved out of that value category, and the Yamaha Tenere 700 was one of those fantastic bikes that answered that need, and I feel like it no longer does because of its new pricing, which makes me a little bit disappointed. And it's also a missed opportunity for Yamaha because that was their bread and butter. And Honda is coming in with the Transalp 750, which significantly undercuts the Tenere 700 in pricing. Yamaha, I still think you should really offer a bare bones basic model like you did back in the day so that it's still an adventure bike of the people. But I do want to end on a positive note. I think that all the components that Yamaha have put on the World Raid are fantastic. They really just build upon an already fantastic base model, and they make this bike so much more capable. As I said, I really think of this bike as the Simpson Desert ready Tenere 700. If I was getting a Tenere, this is definitely the one I'd go for. I love what they've done. Always a sad moment when you have to go back to the dealership and hand the keys back in. Thank you to Cully's Yamaha and Triumph Belcata as always. So until next time guys, don't forget to stay shiny side up, and I'll see you in the next one.